What comes to mind when you think of ancient Egypt? Pyramids, Tutankhamun, Cleopatra. What if I told you the story of Egypt began long before them, with a king whose legacy is etched into the very foundation of civilization, yet his name is often lost to the sands of time? This is the story of Djer, a ruler from a time so distant it feels like myth. Our journey takes us back over 5,000 years to the dawn of the Egyptian state. Before the Great Pyramid of Giza pierced the sky, before hieroglyphs filled temple walls with epic tales, the First Dynasty was just beginning. It was an era of unification, a fragile time when the newly joined lands of Upper and Lower Egypt needed a steady hand. That hand belonged to King Djer. He wasn't the very first king of this united Egypt. That honor likely belongs to his predecessor, Horaha, and perhaps even the legendary Narmer. But Djer inherited this fledgling kingdom and took on the immense task of transforming it from a newly conquered territory into a cohesive, powerful nation. Imagine the world he lived in. No sprawling cities as we know them, just emerging settlements along the life-giving Nile. The concepts of statehood, bureaucracy, and international trade were being invented right there under his rule. For an estimated 40 years, Djer reigned. Think about that, 4 decades of stability in an age of constant uncertainty. This wasn't a reign of passive existence, it was one of action and ambition. Archaeological evidence, though scarce, paints a picture of a proactive ruler. We find traces of his authority far and wide. Expeditions were sent into the Sinai Peninsula, not just for exploration, but to secure valuable resources like turquoise and copper. This wasn't just about wealth, it was about projecting power and establishing Egypt's presence on the world stage, a stage that was just being set. These expeditions were dangerous, crossing harsh deserts, a testament to the organization and determination of his administration. At home, he was just as busy. He continued the work of establishing a centralized government, a system that would endure for millennia. Administrative centers were likely developed, taxes were collected, and royal authority was solidified. His name, Djer, has been found on seals and labels from Saqqara in the north to Abydos in the south, showing the reach of his rule. He was building the very scaffolding of the pharaonic state, creating the systems and structures that would allow later pharaohs to build their monumental wonders. Djer wasn't just a military leader or an administrator. He was also a patron of culture and religion. The craftsmanship from his era is astonishing. Intricate copper tools, beautifully carved ivory labels, and elegant stone vessels show a society with a blossoming artistic tradition. One of the most fascinating artifacts linked to his reign is a label that might depict one of the earliest representations of a royal ceremony, the Hebsed festival. This jubilee, celebrated after a king had ruled for 30 years, was a ritual of renewal, magically reinvigorating the king's power to rule. If Djer celebrated this, it underscores his long and successful reign. But perhaps the most enduring part of Djer's legacy is what happened after his death. He was buried at Abydos, the ancestral necropolis of Egypt's first kings. His tomb complex was elaborate, a massive underground chamber lined with wood, surrounded by the graves of over 300 retainers. These weren't just servants, they were courtiers, artisans, and women of the court, buried alongside their king to serve him in the afterlife. This practice, which thankfully faded after the First Dynasty, reveals the immense power and divine status the king held. He was not just a man, he was the center of their universe. And here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. Centuries, even millennia after his death, Djer's tomb wasn't forgotten. It became a site of pilgrimage. Later Egyptians, from the Middle Kingdom onward, no longer saw it as the tomb of an ancient king. Instead, they believed it was the burial place of Osiris, the god of the underworld, rebirth, and resurrection. This sacred connection transformed the site. A staircase was built down into the tomb so pilgrims could leave offerings. The entire necropolis became the holiest ground in Egypt, a place where every Egyptian hoped to be buried or at least have a monument. Think about the significance of this. An earthly king's final resting place became the mythical tomb of a god. Djer, the man, was so foundational, so ancient, that his historical identity merged with the divine. He was no longer just a king who ruled. He became part of the very fabric of Egyptian religion, a symbol of the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth that was so central to their worldview. He was the human anchor for a divine myth. So, while we marvel at the golden mask of Tutankhamun or the sheer scale of the pyramids, it's crucial to remember the giants on whose shoulders they stood. Djer was more than just a name on a king list. He was a pioneer, a nation builder, and a stabilizer. He secured Egypt's borders, organized its administration, and fostered its early culture. He ruled for so long that he brought a generation of peace and prosperity, allowing the seeds of Egyptian civilization to take deep root. His legacy is not one of towering monuments, but of something far more important: foundations. He helped build the administrative and religious framework that defined ancient Egypt for 3,000 years. The quiet power of his reign echoed through eternity, transforming him from a historical king into a divine figure. So next time you see a picture of the pyramids, look beyond the stones and remember the long line of rulers who made it all possible, starting with figures like Djer the king, who helped forge a kingdom from the mud of the Nile and laid the groundwork for a legend. Thanks so much for watching. If you're fascinated by the hidden stories of the ancient world, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into history. See you next time!